I want to say I'll talk about it. All right, folks. So today we're going to talk about chapter 11 out of our book. This is the end of a major chapter over the Franks, Germanic people coming into what used to be Roman territory. And so, yeah, the image we have here, this is a painting that's representing year 455 when a people called the Vandals, which is where we get the word vandalism from, took over Rome. And when the Vandals would take over places, they wouldn't just loot everything they could. They would also do mass slaughter of people, enslave who they could. And they would also burn down and destroy anything they came across. They would smash statues, burn down buildings. They were super destructive. They're going to go all through Rome, and eventually I think they're going to make their own kingdom in North Africa. And it's going to be a pirate kingdom. They're going to build boats, and they're going to go out to the ocean from then on out, robbing boats, doing like coastal raids and stuff like that, and just like laying waste to anything they come across. That too. But yeah, you see how they're dressed like Germanic barbarians and stuff like that. Unlike the Romans, they wore pants. Romans did wear pants. A real man in Greece and Rome wore a skirt. Like toga, robe, stuff like that. Yeah. So they had mustaches, like long mustaches, long hair. Men tended to trim their hair. Some of them grew beards or they shaved, but they never just had a straight mustache like that. They preferred like bigger, longer swords, things like that. They weren't quite as organized, but by this time, the Romans essentially didn't have a very functional government anymore. And because they didn't have a very functional government, they didn't have a functional military. So, yeah, they might have guys who are willing to go out and fight, but they don't have them organized and well equipped and things like that, so that you can have these hardened raiders come in and lay waste to the city. Rome is going to be taken over and pillaged like this more than once, and eventually it's not going to be able to recover. Let me see, what's this other one? So a lot of these people that we call Germanic invaders, they're going to come from essentially Eastern Europe. And we call this period the Great Migration or the Germanic Migration. When you have a lot of these folks are coming into Europe, one of the reasons why they're moving over is when we talk about human migration, we talk about push factors and pull factors. So a pull factor pulls you from your old home, and a push factor pushes you into a new one. So what they speculate was pulling these people into Roman territory is that it was safer for them. It was prosperous, had a warmer climate, better food, stuff like that. What was pushing them out of their ancestral homes was mostly people who were related to the Mongolians, people like the Avars and the Huns, these horseback raiders who were very good at archery. They would go in, kill the men in a village, take their children and their wives and their loot and all that stuff. And so you have essentially these people trying to get away from that. Happens all around the world. It happens in every continent. The Americas, North and South, this has happened with Native Americans, where one tribe is fleeing another. It's just a story of people. So we have our chapter. And in our chapter, I posed 2 questions for you we're going to answer. So the first is, let's go to the one over here first, laws. So you have these 2 people living together. You have multiple Germanic tribes moving into Roman territory, something we talked about earlier in the year, and I really wanted to talk about last year, but COVID messed it up. So how were their laws worked out between these 2 people, the Romans and the Germanic people?
The Romans, they had like the laws that were when they were under the empire.
Yeah. So, yeah, they have what we call the Julian laws, right? They had the ones made by Caesar and stuff like that. So, Romans had one set of laws. While the Germanic people had another. Now, can you have a country or an empire exist if you have two sets of people living together, but they get judged by different laws? They got different courts, different punishments, and taxes and stuff like that. No, everybody, they didn't have equality under the law. So, for example, like Germanic law often had things were settled through trial by combat. So if one neighbor's son got into a fight with the other neighbor's son and one of them killed the other one, it was supposed to be either blood for blood or like revenge killing, or somebody would have to have trial by combat between the two families to make it right. Even divorce cases with Germanic people were held like this. So if like you had two, like a husband and a wife, they wanted to get divorced, the husband and the wife would have trial by combat often to settle it. And usually to make it even, they might do something like they might bury the husband up to the chest and give him an axe, and then they'll give the wife an axe and have them like whack at each other. So it was very barbaric. Whereas the Romans had the ancient Roman laws where you were supposed to go before a judge and you could have a lawyer, and it was much more civilized and the laws were written down. Especially by now, the Romans also, a lot of it's tempered to where you have, these are Christian people, so they try not to be quite as blood for blood like the ancient Romans would be, right? So they got rid of things like crucifixion and stuff like that that the ancient Romans would do. They still had forms of execution, but it wasn't quite as brutal as it used to be. So yeah, you have a separation there. They have different languages. And what did the book say about like the Germanic people for paying taxes? So they get the benefits of the Roman Empire, but did they pay taxes?
No.
No, they didn't pay taxes. They saw it beneath them. So you got a group of people living in the country who have a separate set of laws. They don't pay taxes, and they don't live by the customs. So what you see is you start seeing the country or the empire start to fragment. You have inequality. You have all these other things, and a lot of these people were invited because, as you see here with the fusion, because as the empire started to fall apart, they needed cheaper ways to keep themselves safe, and the barbarians were willing to fight for cheaper. So they would hire barbarians to fight barbarians. So this brings me to this fusion of the Germans and the Romans. So they listed like 4 things as the Germanic people came in that helped them to sort of integrate into the Roman lifestyle. Does anybody remember one of them? It was towards the end.
Germans found their way to the empire as hired soldiers.
Yeah, so first, Germans hired as mercenaries. But here's the problem with that. If you had me last year, you remember that whenever the Roman Republic started to fall apart before it became the empire, what made it fall apart was that Roman generals would use their armies to get political power. And so in Rome, they had the Republic, they had the emperor, but the guy who was really in charge was whoever controlled the military. What they're doing here, though, is they're having non-Romans in charge of the military. And that's going to be the thing that's eventually going to kill the empire. If the military's the one that's keeping it safe and in charge, they handed the military over to non-Romans. What was another thing? But for the Germans, that's going to help them kind of integrate into the empire, even though it's falling apart. Yeah, so they came small numbers at a time. So second came in relatively small numbers. So they were they'd be definitely thousands of people at a time. What about their beliefs? A lot of these people were,
Already.
yeah, many of them were Christians. They were Arian Christians who would eventually convert to either Eastern Orthodoxy or Catholicism, or many of them would just convert from paganism. And there was one more thing, I think.
And they came in as home seekers.
Yeah. So and that's what we call, they wanted to slice the pie. They didn't want to burn the pie down. So they wanted the Roman benefits or lifestyle. So not all of them were like the Vandals and wanted to just destroy and go live off and be pirates somewhere. A lot of them actually wanted to live like Romans. They wanted to have wine. They wanted to have a villa. They wanted to have nice, clean clothes and stuff like that. Have baths, people like that. So a lot of them wanted to live that civilized lifestyle because, especially after being, migrating for a long time, living in essentially like huts or tents and things like that, hunting and gathering, they want to have a good life. And that's true for today. A lot of people, they migrate from one place to another because they want to have a better life. People are people throughout time. Let me go ahead and cut this off. If you're joining us for the live stream, it's a very short lecture today. So we only went over this chapter 11. We're going to spend the rest of the class period. I have a short primary source reading that I'm going to scan and I'm going to send it to you on Google Classroom, but I won't be able to do that till this afternoon. So be on the lookout for that. I'll have a few questions regarding it as well. You can spend the rest of the class period time going on to Quizlet, and I have our Quizlet sets for chapters 3 through 8 made. We're going to have our quiz tomorrow. You're going to have the same terms and questions as the people in class, but I'm going to post it through Google Classroom, and it's going to have multiple choice, and it's going to look kind of like a survey through Google Classroom, but it's still going to grade it and submit that grade to me. So make sure you study those terms. It's over chapter 3 to 8. I'll post that for you tomorrow as well, and we'll see you later. Bye. A short one.